Hey everybody, Nicholas Snow here. Welcome to an action-packed adventure of another episode of Notes from Hollywood. I couldn't be more excited because my guest today is someone I've been connected to for quite a while in my role as an entertainment journalist and in his role as a filmmaker, Quentin Lee. More about him in a minute. If this is the first time you're tuning in to PromoHomo.TV, there's 5 different series on the network. You can find them all at PromoHomo.TV. You can subscribe to the channel on YouTube and look for the official Nicholas Snow verified page on Facebook. With that said, Quentin Lee of gay Hollywood dad fame is busier than ever. A member of the Producers Guild of America, Quentin has directed and produced over 10 features. This man is busy. Not only is he a dad, but he's very busy. Winning the 2020 Roddenberry Impact Award, Margin Films owner and creator Quentin Lee, known from White Frog, The People I've Slept With, Comedy Invasion, is co-creating with author Adi Tantameth. I'm going to have to get that pronunciation from Quentin later. A sci-fi comedy web series titled Commissary that is currently being shot and released on Facebook via AsianAmericanMovies.com, an SVOD platform that Quentin has founded to showcase Asian American features, shorts, and shows to a global audience. Also on deck for Quentin, Bresh Boys Club, a gay male stand-up comedy special, which will be releasing on September 8th from Comedy Dynamics on all platforms. If that's not enough, in addition, Quentin is co-creating an American television situational comedy titled HollywoodShare.tv with choreographer and filmmaker Jennifer Eurokis, Shannon Elizabeth, and Mindy Cohn, and upcoming gay black stand-up comedian Samson McCormick. Up north, Quentin is co-creating a Canadian television situational comedy titled Son of Smiley with stand-up comedian Ed Hill, based upon his acclaimed podcast of the same name. Asian mega pop star Edison Chen, Steph Song, Nadia Hatta, and Ed Hill are attached as the recurring leads, and Michael Parker and Shan Tam's Holiday Pictures are the production company. So much going on with Quentin, and we're going to hear from him directly after this. So I told you in advance that Quentin is a busy man, and he is. I want you to know, though, if you're watching this episode live and you comment with your questions or your comments or views, I can import your comment right into the show just like this. So if you're watching live, I encourage your participation. And with that said, let's welcome to the show Quentin Lee. Hi, Quentin. Oops, I want a bigger shot of you. Hi, Quentin. How's it going?
Pretty good. Good. Go ahead.
When I reached out to you, I knew that you would make an interesting interview. I had no idea all of these things that you're currently up to, and I'm sort of in a wow mode at everything that you have on your plate.
Yeah. So I think the last time we met was actually in Palm Springs, right, for I think for Gay Hollywood Dad, it was like premiering or something. But yeah, lately I've been really busy. Just to give you a little bit of clarification, I actually did not win the Roddenberry Award for Co-Misery, and I actually won it for a project called Demos that I haven't yet written, and I was about to write it, and that was the prize money went into like basically paying for me and the writer to write this thing. So, but I just wanted to take the opportunity to publicize Co-Misery being one, which is this web series that we just made about it's a sci-fi comedy about 5 Asian American friends, and as they're going through COVID and hang out online, they also discovered an alien invasion because one of them apparently became an alien, the other one came back from 20 years later to try to save the rest of the group. So you can watch it right now. Actually, it's on Facebook, so it's through PromoHomo.TV. And yeah, so it's a really exciting time, and yeah, especially during this COVID time, and it's sort of like shooting this web series really kept me sane.
Well, I'm glad that you're keeping busy. I'm certainly keeping busy. You know, one of the things I'd love to address off the top is you are from Hong Kong, and I'm wondering, are you glued to the political news? What do you have family members and friends that are in harm's way? What would you like to say about your take on Hong Kong and the challenges they're having politically right now?
Yeah, I grew up in Hong Kong, and my family actually moved over to Canada in 1986 because they were kind of afraid that this situation would be really kind of like challenging, with China taking Hong Kong back from the British rule, and that's kind of why I came over here anyway. So we went to Canada first, went to Montreal. So my dad stayed in Canada. My dad stayed in Montreal, but moved to Vancouver. Then around college time, I went to Berkeley, and then pretty much stayed here since. My mom and my two sisters are currently in Hong Kong, and I think one of my sisters on the verge of moving to London. So so basically my family's all broken up, mostly because of this fear of back then it was 1997, where they thought China was going to come and take over and take away your freedom, and but now basically. It's a really kind of like difficult situation for me because also I've left Hong Kong for a while and I have very different opinion from some of my friends who are there, and I do understand that I'm not in Hong Kong anymore, and I sort of built my life elsewhere. But I mean, like I sort of was in Hong Kong basically last November, so I already saw all this tension was going on because I was actually in the middle of a lot of the protests. And basically, I think that with the umbrella movement and also with the most current protests, they sort of pushed China to this brink that, they felt like they have to restore order, basically. So that's why they came out with this sort of like, this kind of bill just to say that, if you do anything potentially, you do anything that is like politically subversive, you could be arrested, right? And obviously, coming from a democratic country, you realize, okay, that's something that's not really great. But at the same time, after the turnover, Hong Kong is really part of China, so it's hard to blame China for not trying to tighten the grip on the political situation, especially with the developments from the umbrella movement to the current protests, and which at the same time is also bothering a lot of residents in Hong Kong. So basically, they were already living a COVID life before COVID was happening, and then unfortunately, COVID happened, and it sort of started in China, and then Hong Kong was actually good enough to be able to control the situation of COVID because they have experienced SARS back in 2003 or something, and so I was in Hong Kong during the explosion of SARS also, and man, Hong Kong was really beaten because of that, and because of that experience, they just make sure that people are not going to get sick, and they've been pretty successful in containing COVID, and it's funny because I came back from Hong Kong in November. I came back to LA from Hong Kong in November, and I really learned about basically COVID is spreading. Because I think when I was in Hong Kong, I was already hearing about the coronavirus. Back then they called it the Wuhan pneumonia, and I was just hoping that it's not going to come over here. So by January, I was still hoping it's not going to come over here, and now it's all over. What can you say? Well,
Wear a mask.
all
That's
this
what you
together.
can say. Wear a
I
mask.
know.
So I would be remiss if I didn't ask you about this as well. Anti-Asian sentiment is being fueled by the man in the White House and the use of slurs to describe COVID. And I'm wondering what you would like to say about this atrocity, in my opinion, and whether or not you or friends that you've known have been specifically victimized because of racist views of COVID.
You know what? It's interesting that you mentioned that because I've been having a lot of arguments with my very liberal friend, and obviously I didn't vote for Trump. I voted for Hillary, and I also, obviously I went to Berkeley, and then most of my life I'm a very liberal person, so I don't really agree with his politics per se. But then at the same time, I understand his intention of calling COVID the Chinese virus because, and it's interesting that, Trump is this one person that is basically willing to stand up against China. And also ironically, the Republicans are also doing the same things. Like, so Marco Rubio and a bunch of these guys that were banned from going to China. And then, so this tit for tat thing is, I don't know what to say. And some of my friends are very pro-China. They're not even Chinese, but they're pro-China because they felt like, well, America should be doing this. But at the same time, I think that there's something. I mean, I'm not saying that Trump is necessarily doing the right things, but he has been doing some right moves basically for the U.S. For example, China. Like a few weeks ago, China was saying that, okay, well, no American airlines can fly into China. And Trump says, okay, well, no American flies in, no Chinese airlines can fly in either. So as soon as they heard that, then they kind of stopped this whole kind of thing, So now,
Well,
it's a
what
very
about
complex situation to comment. And again, like, I understand, obviously, that. So again, like, can you blame Trump on not wearing a mask or not basically promoting this mask wearing this earlier, So, but I think like a lot of like what what happened in America in terms of like people not wearing masks and how COVID has been spreading, it's a lot because you're in a big country, so a lot of, and also you're in democracy, so a lot of your a lot of like all these responsibility actually lies in the responsibility of the citizens. And if a lot of your citizens decide that, let's say 40% of them, that's Trump supporters, they say, oh, you know what, I'm not going to wear a mask and blah, blah, blah. It is kind of their right? But at the same time, by them insisting on these rights, or, they end up spreading COVID a lot more. And just like these are the same people that victimize, Asian people just because they think, oh, okay, you're Asian, you have coronavirus. And also, this is not an American phenomenon. It's actually a global phenomenon. And just very early on, like at the beginning of coronavirus, maybe around like February or something, my friend was actually in Germany, and he took a video of some random German guy going around him in the U-Bahn, calling him coronavirus, And he took that video and then posted it. So very early on, I felt like I had already seen this kind of like global racism happening, And it's really hard to blame it on a government or one kind of like, person. But at the same time, these are, we're in democracies, but still, racism happens in democracy. Just like that's why we have Black Lives Matter, and that's why you have like now a lot of Watch the Hate and anti-Asian discrimination kind of like campaigns and things like that. I mean, I think that like I'm not saying that is anybody's problem. I'm saying that, I agree with Trump's politics, but at the same time, we can't blame it all on, one person or one government. But in China we can, because it's authoritarian government, right? So they said, okay,
Well,
you can't come out of the house, you can't get out. So if they make
so
mistakes in terms of the governance, then it's
So
on them.
when I was asking about the racist slur, I wasn't necessarily referring to the identification of the country in which the virus has appeared. I'm talking about the slur that's based upon the reference to martial arts.
Oh, the Kung Flu one, right?
Right,
Yeah,
exactly. And I have heard news reports of lots of Asian Americans or that have received that have been, basically bashed because of their ethnicity.
yeah. I mean, like I think like I mean, this is like a symptomatic of something like a lot deeper. It's kind of deeper sense of racism in America in general. And I've been here 30 years, and I'm just beginning to sort of understand it a little bit more of what really. I mean, like obviously, you have the most superficial thing is just to like calling names, saying kung flu and whatever. Um, but at the same time, there's something a lot more deeper in terms of like how, as a person of color, you're being looked at right away. And I remember my experience of it. Of like, I haven't had any COVID things happen to me yet. So, but over the years, I remember I was interviewing for UCLA Film School, and um, and then this one professor, obviously, like should have read my application, stuff like that. And he says, Quentin, what do you think about you being in a class with people that are privileged, whatever? I said, that's a very weird question. I said, like, well, does he not think that I'm privileged enough? Because I'm graduating from Yale, went to Cal, and obviously, but what I realized now is that for him, for this professor, the first thing he thought, okay, this Asian kid come in, he has to be a person of color. He must come from like a poor family or whatever, and so he's asking, would I get along with privileged people when I'm already kind
So
of privileged?
so you felt like you were being racially profiled in a way that was designed to try to be supportive of you?
Yes, exactly. I mean, it's funny that you think. I mean, again, like another example I realized was that like Henry Louis Gates, right, Harvard professor, very famous Harvard professor, right, and he was just walking back into his house and he lost his key, right. Forgot his key, and then he was just trying to get in and through a window or something, and then his neighbors called the cops on him and got arrested. And you
I
can just read
remember
about
that.
that, right? Remember that? And then also like my friend, who my friend Justin Lin, and we came out from film school together, and we directed a feature together called Shopping for Fangs, and so I think he was directing his second Fast and the Furious movie. Showed up on set one day and kind of like, well, we're about to walk in, and security says, you know what? This is a movie set, you can't come in. Then he said, well, I am the director of this film. And this is, yeah, sure. And then turn him away. Then obviously the guy got fired. But you can just still, like, you can see, like, at all levels of America, whether it's just a security guard to, a very educated professor like my professor, or neighbors of Henry Louis Gates, they still have a really kind of like a kind of weird profiling in their mind that it's kind of hard to, that we haven't been able to overcome, And a case like George Floyd, is a very extreme case, right? You can see that, wow, this black man was killed or was murdered basically because
Well,
of,
well, it's extreme, and
so
it seems really extreme because we haven't had such evidence of it. But what we're learning is these things happen all the time. The difference is this was caught on video.
yeah, I mean, like again, like I mean, the violence are more on the extreme level, but I think we have not been able to deal with on a cultural level how you actually look at people of color, and I guess the only way to really deal with this is it's like just for filmmakers people of color filmmakers and people of color media makers to make more images and tell more stories about themselves, so that the mainstream slowly get to understand that, well, not all Asian kids parents own like, laundry store, right, laundromat store, or laundromat or something, because that was what, most people think. And I just, even from like talking to my aunt, my aunt basically came over to the U.S. back, I don't know, in the 70s, went to Mills and then went to UCLA Business School, but she still felt that she was discriminated against, because when I first came to America I'd say in 1980, well, Berkeley was 1988. The first thing my aunt tells me is, "Oh my God, these Americans always think like I work a laundromat," and it's that type of a profiling that I feel like, racism is so deep rooted in our system. But then at the same time, it's not really one person's fault per se. It has to be a collective consciousness that needs to change.
Well, I want to thank you for diving into those serious topics. I know that's not something that you necessarily knew I would talk about, but I like to be
I think
organic.
it's great because it's been on my mind, because I was thinking about it. It's like, there's just, I mean, something like this, when Trump talks about, oh, it's Kung Flu or the Chinese virus, it's something that is so easy to catch. And I think that's what scares me about what people constantly criticizing these kind of like superficial kind of thing, but without examining deeper into ourselves and the kind of like, our profiling of all kinds of races. Like, I just remember I was going to Berkeley, and I was just, it was like late, it was like 11 o'clock, and I was just in my apartment, and I heard door knocks, and I didn't live in really a good neighborhood either. It's like, it was a little bit shady neighborhood by campus, and then there was this black guy, kind of dressed really well, and he was knocking on the door, and I was just, for a second, I was like, I'm kind of scared. I should not open the door. And he probably just went to the wrong apartment. So, but I kind of questioned myself, like, hey, why did you, first thing that you see in the middle of the night, this black guy who actually wasn't dressed terribly, dressed okay, was knocking on the door, and you had kind of this feeling, right?
That would be a microaggression.
Microaggression?
Yeah, that would be described as a microaggression. When we make a decision like that about someone else based upon their race.
Yeah, so I mean, like, I think we all do that. It's just a matter of like, having to go deeper and unlearning myself, unlearning those kind of like, stereotypic images, and yeah,
we have to challenge ourselves as the white guy in the room. I'm doing a deep dive into my own connection to systemic racism. And I know that I'm not the one to lead or teach as the white guy with privilege, but I try to amplify the issues and provide a platform for people that have their own unique and very specific perspective. One of the things that you talked about was sharing your individual stories, and you did that in a deep, intimate way with Gay Hollywood Dad and the surrogate birth of your son Casper. And a lot of people came to know you because of that particular project, and other people know you dating way back to Ethan Mao. And clearly you've built a following over time. But is your son now 4 or 5?
He's 4 right now. Yeah.
4. I knew I did the math correctly.
When probably like was 2, when he was 2, or maybe I think when he was 2 or 1.
Actually, I think that
2018, right,
I think you and I initially met in Outfest a long, long time ago. But no worries. The last time we saw each other was definitely when you were in Palm Springs. Tell me about how people have been reacting to Gay Hollywood Dad and you and the subject matter now that it is so widely available for subscribers of Amazon Prime, to name just one source. Do you find people's views of surrogacy, of gay parenting, are changing? Are you the focus of hostility? Do you have haters? Do you have lovers? How's the experience for you?
You know what? I don't think Gay Hollywood Dad is that popular yet. Because I don't think, cause even with friends, a lot of my friends from like, I just have lunch with my elementary school friend, and she's on my Facebook for years, and somehow she's never checked it out. So I had to explain to her what is the process of having a surrogate kid is like, and she's like, "Oh my God, that's kind of new," and so again, like my effort of really making Gay Holiday was really just to hopefully to shorten my explanation a little bit in terms of like why I decided to have a kid and things like that. And but you know what? It's probably not popular enough, and so still a lot of people ask me a lot of questions. And but that's the point of this project. What Gay Holiday is because I wanted to have a document so that if my friend's son needs to know things, or if he needs to tell his friends about it, and he can just watch a film. So there is that kind of documentary document around. So.
Well, is being a father what you imagined? Is it? I mean, I'm sure being a parent is one of the greatest things one can experience. But how is fatherhood for you?
It's actually getting a lot better because when I was shooting Gay Holiday, he was like 1 or 2, and that was actually the toughest years for me because I was just really barely getting enough sleep and surviving, even with my nanny helping, and she was there, and she finally after 3 years old, she finally couldn't take it anymore, so she quit. She left the job, but it's a lot of work.
Was that traumatic for Casper?
You know what? No, they're still friends. What happened was that my nanny's husband passed away very suddenly.
Oh.
And that actually she's from Hong Kong, so she had to go back to Hong Kong to take care of a lot of businesses. But so when we were back in Hong Kong, actually last November, we had dinner, we had lunch, and so one thing I think that my Casper deals pretty well is because I think my parenting policy or whatever my parenting philosophy is just to be as honest as possible. So when something like that happened, I just tell them, I'm so sorry, but Mom has to leave because her husband passed away and she needed to be in Hong Kong and take care of stuff, and so she needed to be in Hong Kong. She couldn't be with us anymore. So and he accepted it pretty well. And so,
no,
I mean, even though he was too young, but I still try to be as honest as possible with him, rather than dressing up, So it's funny because a friend came up and we was talking because he said my friend's dad committed suicide.
Oh.
So he was talking to his brother. I think he wrote something on Facebook. So his brother actually basically banned the relationship between him and the brother's kids because the brother just told his children that the grandfather died of some kind of heart attack, and not telling him this whole suicide thing. And they were I think they were 6 or 10 or something like that. So again, I feel like if I were the parent myself, and my friend asked me, would you tell, let's say if my dad committed suicide, would I tell my son that my dad committed suicide? I think I would, because I feel honesty is still the best policy.
I was about to say the exact same thing. Now, correct me if I'm wrong about this assumption I'm making. So my assumption is, and you referenced your own privilege earlier, my assumption is that you come from a family of means that has been able to support you through your premium education and perhaps since then help you follow your dreams. Is that correct?
Yes, that's definitely correct, yeah.
Oh, okay. And I haven't watched all of the documentary Gay Hollywood Dad, but one of the first things you talk about was feeling like you came from a family in which you didn't have the experience of love that you wanted. And I found it fascinating that would be one of the first things out of your mouth in the documentary, when in other ways you've had tremendous support from your family. And I'm wondering, and I don't think that one invalidates the other. You can have both of those experiences, and there's definitely different parenting styles and different ways that people express love in families. I'm just curious if that was difficult, if that created any difficulty for your family who ends up participating in the documentary, that one of your inspirations to have a kid was to give that kid an experience that you yourself didn't have.
I mean, whatever my family that I complain that I which is true because I felt like as I was growing up as a kid, and I really didn't get enough attention from my family because my dad's always working. My dad was always working, and my mom was always she's still a socialite though. So so it's so that's kind of how I've been feeling as a kid. So when I want to have a kid, I want to be able to like give them a lot of time all the way growing up to the teenagers or whatever, and just try to be there as much as possible, right? But then for what I didn't have, they were very supportive in terms of just in general my decision to do anything, and I think they have been mostly. I'd say after 12, they've always been pretty honest with me. They tell me exactly what's going on. Like if my grandmother died, they tell me your grandmother died, and if you did something wrong, they tell you exactly. So that's at least they're very honest in terms of that way. And so I kind of learned that kind of like really honest philosophy of parenting from them.
Well, it's great that you have those relationships. Something else. So you have a friend in the documentary. He drinks a lot. The party
It's
guy.
funny. So he's ironically very emotionally close to his family, but unfortunately, he's still not out to them.
And he's in this documentary.
He
What is
lives
his
with
name?
them,
Oh my gosh, he lives with someone he's not. And what is his
yes,
name?
my friend Adrian. No.
So what is it? I thought it was really funny that you have his name and then you describe him as a socialite. And I'm curious, what qualifies someone to be a socialite? How do you apply that term?
Well, I would say that if you go to like West Hollywood and you got arrested, and then somebody snap a photo of you and threaten to post a photo in some WeHo blog site or something like that, and then he has to do some favors to get that photo pulled, and that's kind of like a socialite.
So someone that has someone who has a public image to protect.
Yes, exactly. Like my mom was definitely a socialite because she's definitely, socialized a lot, and she's still to this date that she still socializes a lot. And sometimes she showed up in Hong Kong, what do you call those? Hong Kong like tabloids once in a while. So that would be what I call a socialite.
Okay, that's great. So I'm just glancing.
Almost at that level.
Okay. Now, one of the things I wanted to know about is the AsianAmericanMovies.com. I think it's, I know that for me, it's really important for me to see myself and my life reflected in cinema. And you have been involved in all of this work for a long time in terms of creating cinema that reflects the Asian experience. So, it's not surprising to me at all that you would be involved with such a project, but tell me more about AsianAmericanMovies.com and your connection to it.
Yeah, AsianAmericanMovies.com is basically, right now, I'm the only person starting it. Before, it was called Chopso.com, and it was started by three partners, Koji, which is Koji Steven Sakai, who is a screenwriter, and also Sue Lim Sukon, and she's a graphic designer. And we sort of started this thing called Chopso, and basically we acquired a lot of Asian American short films, features, and TV shows, but to basically just like a Netflix. But at the same time, that organization ran itself to the third year, and we just couldn't make any money out of it, and we couldn't finance it. I think that was like we just really didn't have the marketing budget for it, so we have to kind of close it, and then I restarted like AsianAmericanMovies.com because I think the problem with Chopso is that people have no idea what Chopso is. It's like and you're like you're trying to create this brand without able to market this brand, and so I just basically took it over and turned it into AsianAmericanMovies.com, which I think when you hear Asian American movies, you know exactly what it is, and I actually collected like basically all my works and put it on there, and then I'm also acquiring like the works that I really like, and then I will be putting it some of the works on there too. For example, there's a series called The Haunted Bay, which is actually a friend made about like the ghost stories set in San Francisco and Greater San Francisco area. So it's basically ghost hunters, from this group called Alameda Paranormal Society or something. And she is Asian American. Her name is Ying Liu. So, and then she did this really compelling series, and we were able to acquire it and put it on AsianAmericanMovies.com and also on Amazon Prime. So, so that's what it is for. It's just for like a more centralized place where you would be able to get like Asian American content, and not just all split up. Like occasionally there's a Crazy Rich Asians and there's something here. It's Netflix doesn't even have that much of an Asian American kind of channel kind of thing.
What did you think, by the way? What did the success of Crazy Rich Asians mean to you personally?
I think it's very helpful. It's definitely helpful because I think back when I started film school in 1990. Sorry, I started film school in 1993, and it was just impossible. Like you think that you want to write an all Asian cast kind of feature. It has to be an independent film. So that's why Justin Lin and I started making like Shopping for Fangs, and we wanted to do a hip version we wanted to do like a young people version of kind of Charlotte Club kind of thing. So we made that, went to Toronto Film Festival, didn't get any distribution deal because it was just so ahead of its time. And it was also John Cho's first feature, by the way. So, but then obviously, 20 years later now, with the success of Crazy Rich Asians, it really proves that, Asian American content can work on a mainstream level and definitely open up a lot of doors, just even for me.
What is it that you would like to talk about? I know that you have the big Brash Boys Club is coming up. It's a gay male comedy stand-up special. But in addition to that, and say whatever you would like about it, what else would you like to touch upon in our interview today?
Yeah, I guess I can just talk a little bit about just the general development of my career. Then I think I started off in, going to film school wanting to make basically queer Asian films because there were no queer Asian films then. But then now, having been in this industry for 20 years, I also realized that, I want to branch out to make other things like for example, this series that I won the Roddenberry Impact Award for it's called Demos. And it's basically a series that's set in 5 continents, about 5 different players from 5 different countries, each playing they connect through playing a secret online game called Demos, which is about building the best democracy in the world. So imagine SimCity, but SimCity it's a SimCity about how to build the best democratic nation. And I'm working with my professor Elizabeth Wilson, my ex-professor Elizabeth Wilson, who's a human rights lawyer, on this, co-writing this together. And basically, we want to be able to have to create a drama that becomes a platform for just anybody to talk about the effects of democracy on their lives and how they can improve a democratic country.
Wow. That's amazing.
So it's a very ambitious project. So, but obviously we're still writing it. So I'm as you can tell, I'm struggling with how to even pitch it right now because it is a very ambitious project, but it's definitely a very exciting project I'm working on. So something like that is like something broader that I'm doing, but at the same time, I still love making queer films. Like that's why I did Brash Boys Club, which is about 3 gay male stand-up comedians each doing a 30-minute set and also, in terms of in the stand-up comedy scene that I've been lately doing a lot of comedies and stuff, and it's very hard for gay male. Like there are not a lot of known gay male stand-up comedians. So and that's why I decided to do Brash Boys Club to find 3 very unique and interesting gay male comedians to come together to do this project. And it's coming up September 8th. Through Comedy Dynamics. It'll be on iTunes, Amazon, Vudu, everything you can see.
Fantastic. I'm sure you're aware of Andrea Meyerson in the film festival circuit, and she did Laughing Matters the Men because she had had several successful films featuring female stand-up comics. And I think it's high time for another film that focuses on gay male stand-up comics. And of course, comedy changes with the times, so there's always the opportunity to have a fresh take. I did watch the trailer on Vimeo, and it was really a fun watch. What else would you like to say before we wrap up?
I think that's about it. I just hope you check out Brash Boys Club, and also check out my web series Commisery, which is on Facebook right now, and you can get to Commisery just by COMISERY.TV, Commisery.TV, and and it's going to be released as a feature because we shot a little bit additional content with it.
Fantastic. Since I am a promo homo, I will say I'm also an actor. So think of me when you're casting something.
Absolutely.
And it's always great, to support people in the business. This show is devoted to people passionately pursuing professions in the entertainment industry, and that certainly includes you. And I appreciate you
Thank
being
you.
on the show today, Quentin.
Thank you, Nicholas.
I'll see you next time.
Yep. Take care.
So I've been on with Quentin Lee, and he is such a renaissance man. You can just Google him. He's on IMDb. If you go to the layout for this episode at PromoHomo.TV, I've embedded some of his films on Amazon, but just go directly to Amazon and search for him. And I just appreciate your taking the opportunity to join me today. If you want to submit guests for the show, go to PromoHomo.TV and check out the About section. And until next time, I'm Nicholas Snow.